it's Matt here, and welcome to another episode of Bricking It. And this one, as you've already read on the title, is actually for a snowplow. And I'm going to go into a bit of a history first, and then we're going to have a look at the model. Snow and ice was originally cleared on railroads in the early days using shovels and axes, and if there was a good source of local fuel, such as a wood, fire. And as locomotives became a bit more powerful and a bit more easier to grip the rails, locomotive fitted ploughs started coming into operation. Unfortunately, some railroad companies discovered that this meant that certain locos were tied up being fitted with snow ploughs, which meant that they weren't necessarily able to do regular duties because they were on line clearing duties. Sometimes these would impact their work, sometimes the plough could be worked around and they could still pull trains. This led to the development of separate vehicles. These originally converted ones, such as converted gondolas, brake vehicles and things of that nature. Something which was reasonably easy to convert and no real loss to the railroad as it was in use. Then you started to go to specialist vehicles such as specific snow ploughs and things like that. And then eventually this transitioned into powered clearing equipment such as your rotary snow ploughs, and then the current day equipment such as the jet melting equipment and things of that nature. Towards the end of the steam era, certain railways and railroads around the world started reusing old equipment as snow ploughs. And an example of this is actually the image shown on the screen, where old locomotive tenders from locomotives which have since been scrapped were fitted with snow ploughs and repurposed as actual snowplow devices. Today's railways and railroads use a mixture of ploughs and powered equipment to clear snow, although it should be pointed out that most modern locomotives actually come pre-fitted with small ploughs which can deal with small snow flurries. So here's the model on screen now, and you can see that I've taken a few liberties compared to modelling an accurate example, and this is supposed to be a bit more of a freelance design. A lot of the snow ploughs that you search for on the internet actually have side plates that actually come out to help sort of spread more snow along the side of the track, so it's not just the track that's clear, it's space next to the track as well to help prevent snow coming back onto the track a bit more. This doesn't have that. This is just a standard wedge plough, and you'd probably find these more in, I'd likely say, urban areas, for the simple fact that if you've got a lot of tunnels and stuff, the side plates probably aren't going to be used as much, or it's an extra cost and extra maintenance when it's not really needed. So sometimes I'd go for a more straightforward sort of plough like this. And these also act as a bit like a caboose or a crew car, in addition to being a snow plough. And quite a lot of them would have facilities like a caboose. And in actual fact, I believe a few actually have been converted from cabooses into snow ploughs in the past. Just so there's a bit more comfort for the crew. And it's making use of extra space within the car that isn't really usable for much else. Aside from maybe a bit of tool storage. So here's the model. This is the sort of like the crew side, if you like. There's actually two sort of sides to this. Like this is sort of like control side, and then you got the crew side on the other side. You could say flip it around and that sort of stuff. And I'm actually going to use the hide tool for this, because so now that we've opened up the sides of the model, you can actually see quite a lot of the detail. There's actually a separate area at the far end which has this sort of like pattern here. I'm hoping if I do when I do build this model, because there's no definite time I'm going to build it, I'm actually going to use like a grid pattern on some dark blue square 1x4 tiles, so you have a sort of like prep area. So maybe if people have been coming in from the outside and have got snowy boots and stuff like that, they can sort of clean off a bit in that sort of area of the snow plough. It's sort of partitioned off so they can do that, and that bit can get a bit messy and it's easy to clean up. The doors don't actually open, they're just fixed in place, and I thought it was just a nice little technique. They do look a slightly bit different. The handles could do with being smaller. I've just used these old style gun ones for now, but on the real one they'll be a lot better. I'll probably use minifig hand and some flex tube probably, so it just looks a bit better. But there's various different things you can do to get better handles, even if you're not using cut flex tube and that sort of stuff. So for the actual crew section, before you get to like the section with the where the cupola would be to look out, you've got a single bed on this side. There is one window, sort of the tail end here, to get extra light into the this sort of area. But you've got a reasonably good bed here. It's not very well furnished, as you might expect for railroad equipment, but it's nonetheless somewhere that you might be able to bunk down for maybe a couple of hours, in a layover or something, while you're waiting for more work, or maybe you're waiting for the storm to clear if it's a bit too much, well, that sort of thing. Or maybe you finish your work and you're just resting. We have a stove on the other side. It's more of a heater, but you could call it a stove. It's and this is actually one of the modified bits from the Brick Model Railroad caboose. I've changed it so it's a bit more of a beefier one, because obviously it's designed for colder climate. This is going to be used in colder weather, so you would want a bit of a bigger one from that aspect. And of course you can't have a stove without having a little bit of a coal bunker as well, and that's really is just to make the most use out of the space there. So obviously the bigger doors mean you lose a bit of space in other areas, so I just thought that was a nice use of that space. Backing onto the stove, you have the sort of like conductor's desk and that sort of stuff, so you have a nice chair here, and obviously that's shown as being butted up against the desk, but you do have a little bit of space it could be moved back to, so maybe this is a bit tight in this snowplow, but there is still room for that sort of stuff. And in actual fact, I could, if I really wanted to, I could modify the design a bit to shove that sort of desk forward a bit, but I thought it'd be nice to give a nice good space so it can write down the train orders, right, and sort of make logs of what they've been doing, what timestamps they've done, and that sort of stuff, so we can report back in that way. On the other side is actually a little cupboard, so obviously you're obviously going to be out for quite a long while in these, so maybe you need some coffee and milk and that sort of stuff, so there's a little cupboard on that side for that purpose. So obviously you've got a stove, so you've got a source of heat, so maybe it's some canned food or something like that, so that when the crew are out for a while, they've got access to heat up some food and maybe make a couple of cups of coffee on the way, just to keep themselves warm and fed. Moving up to the top, we've got the chairs for looking out of the cupola. You will notice that they both face the same way. That does seem to be one of the things with snowplows, is that because they are designed for going in one direction, both chairs actually face the same way. And there is actually a reason that you've got this little console here. Not only does it help hold the cupola in, it's actually got some designs here now. Obviously there is not the sort of like measurement piece that's on there, sort of like the display, but I've actually used this piece here just to simulate that. It should probably be like that to give you a better sort of indication of what it should look like. And then you've got a little black 1x1 round tile there as a button for the air horn. So you might be sort of thinking to yourself, air horn, and you'd actually be right, and I'm actually going to come back to that later on. And just finally, obviously we're entering the front of the car, and you've got this really nice snowplow here. All custom design. It's still based on the wedge shape. It's not final. I will point this out that I'm not entirely happy with the snowplow design as it is at the moment, but I'm waiting to build it in the brick so I can get some sort of designed sort of experience out of it, and maybe see if it's strong enough, maybe see if there's bits I can change, maybe some part substitutions, just to make it a little bit more neater and sort of tidier in that sort of aspect. What I will say, if you notice that there is some snot right at the top here to get that nice angle, because the primary reason that a snowplow is this particular shape, if you've ever studied snowplows and how they work, is that they take the snow up like the base of the plough, and then the rear sort of half of it is actually spreading it out to the sides. So that's what you've got here, is that you've got the initial sort of pickup at the front here. It's then being lifted up off the track to this point, and then the real top of it is actually splitting it up and then throwing it out to the sides of the track, so you can sort of take it elsewhere. Now, interestingly enough, a lot of British snowplows, not necessarily later ones, but a lot of the sort of like locomotive fitted snowplows and some of the more standard ones as well, actually were angled at an angle to take snow off and dump it onto one side, which is something you don't generally see on American snowplows, which I think is a bit weird. But I think that's probably because American railroads are built with a wider track distance between them. So that might not necessarily be so much of an issue compared to British ones. And obviously there are some parts missing from this snowplow, which you have here. This is actually a copy of the brick model railroader Northeastern Caboose Cupula. It has been modified slightly with the air horns on top, so that's that throwback to earlier. You've got the front coupler here. And it is interesting to note that pretty much every snowplow I've seen that has been American has had a coupler on the front. Obviously, compared to British ones or European ones, there's only the one bit to faff out with. You haven't got to worry about buffers or a chain or that sort of stuff. You've just got a front knuckle, so it's a lot easier to fit in that regard. And speaking of couplers, I will go back to the front a second. You can actually sort of see that it actually comes out on a Technic beam, and there's also a little clip there for the actual brake pipe. So I have actually put that in. I might change this to feature one of the modified 1x1 round plates with the bar coming out of it, just so that it's a bit more accurate, I want to say, or a bit more tidier. But no, it's something I can always come back and change later when I'm building it in real life. You also have your roof module section. So if I unhide the pieces, you can actually see that there's a notch there right where the stove is, and you've got the notch there for the chimney. So it's just a neat little way of identifying which way it goes around, and obviously it means you can easily locate it in future. We've got some wheels here because the truck side frames preclude fitting of the wheels on this side. And the last feature I want to talk about is the end of the snowplow here. And you've actually got the steps coming up, and then you've got a roof walkway. Pretty much every snowplow I've seen has had a roof walkway of some description. This one's a little bit more freelanced than the prototypes. And you've actually got, not only have you got a walkway from the sides of the car going up and continuing along the roof, you've also got some clips here, because here would actually be fitted a handrail. So you've got just a bit more extra grip, because obviously these are rather flat, so you wouldn't have much in the way of stuff to grab onto. So a handrail on the side, so you've clambered up here. You then change to gripping onto the side handrail as you then walk up the roof. So it's just a little bit of a sort of like little thing that just fits in rather nicely, because obviously this is sort of designed to be something that would be around mainly in the age of steam. Some sort of came in the steam era, so made it through transition, possibly lasted another decade or two during the diesels, and then was sent to scrap or something, because that's, or maybe preserved or something like that. But you've also got the brake wheel off to one side, and then a rear window as well, just to finish off the end of the car. So the window actually helps, because you can actually sort of see what the conditions are like behind you, and should you ever need to see anything that's coming behind you, maybe you want to check the weather or something like that, You've also got that facility of having all that extra vision around you as well. So that's the episode for the snowplow. This is pretty much complete, I want to say. And as an interesting tidbit, the yellow colour is actually a hint from one of the groups. I mean, I actually asked them what sort of colour should I build my snowplow, and listed the ones which I'd seen in this sort of design, which were black, grey, reddish brown, red and yellow. And actually yellow was the most popular, closely followed by black, I will say. But yellow actually fits in better with the variety of rolling stock I have, because a lot of railroad equipment is reddish brown or black or possibly grey, depending on which railroad you're modelling, what era you're modelling, that sort of stuff. So having this grey and yellow snowplow just breaks up that sort of colour range, if you like, and makes it a bit more prominent. And the other thing as well is that as a snowplow, it's a piece of maintenance of way equipment, so it's supposed to be maybe a bit more brighter, maybe a bit more exaggerated, so it's easier to see. And obviously, of course, being a nice yellow colour, it's quite easily seen against the white background of snow. And again, it's that difference of being not a train or normal piece of road equipment, which would normally be, say, a reddish brown or black. It's a nice bright yellow colour. So that's it for this episode of Bricking It, and maybe you'll see this next tail end of this year, but I'm probably going to say this is going to be one I'm going to leave until 2020, when I've sorted out a lot of the other bits that I want to do. So that's it for this episode, and see you later.